going to get started, and it looks like we have the recording going. So welcome everyone. This is Frederick Winsness with NetHope, and we are delighted to have you join us for another NetHope Solutions Center webinar. Today we're going to talk about using technology to enable evidence-based humanitarian program design. And we are very pleased to have International Rescue Committee, Threshold.World, and Microsoft with us. But before we get started, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. We do want to make this as interactive as possible, so please open the chat window in Zoom. You do that by clicking on the chat button on the bottom of your screen when you hover over the slides, and follow along with the questions there. Post your questions, and we will hold them to the end of the session today and facilitate the Q&A session during the last 10-15 minutes or so. Also, we are recording this. Look for a follow-up email with the link to the recording and the slides and collateral on the NetHope Solutions Center. And you will see as you leave the webinar today a webinar satisfaction poll. We would kindly ask you to answer those questions to help us not only increasing the quality of this webinar series, but also for suggestions for topics in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Eric Arnold with Microsoft, and let's get started.
And this is Eric. I'm going to start by welcoming our panelists and then talking a little bit about the context of this work and how it fits into the broader investments that we're making around accelerators and industry work for the sector. So this is the outcome of an idea session that IRC initiated with input from Rebel, NetHope, and Microsoft, focusing on program design and measurement frameworks. We've been working since that idea session on developing a specific solution around that. And so what you're going to learn today is about that solution itself, the roadmap behind it, and through IRC, an organization that is currently in the throes of learning about how to improve the tools for program design and implementing measurement framework across the organization. So joining us on the panel today are Jess Barrett and Nick Bannister. Jess is a senior program manager in IT with IRC. And Nick leads the measurement team that is looking at some of the tooling and innovation that they want to introduce into the process. From the Microsoft side, you have myself. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Tech for Social Impact within Microsoft Philanthropes, and Aaron McHugh-Safe, who's the global lead for product development on my team. Lastly, joining us is Dan Lamott. Dan is one of the founders and CEO of Threshold.World, a close partner of ours that have been working on the common data model and the accelerators, as well as building out solutions like this one. So next slide. So for the agenda today, we're going to focus first on putting some of the work in context, where program design and measurement frameworks fit within the work that we're doing for the sector at Microsoft. Then IRC will take it and talk about their measurement strategy and how this fits in and some of their learnings. And then we'll do a demo of the tool itself, talk about our roadmap, and then have a discussion before we close. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Aaron.
Hello all, and thanks so much for joining today. We can jump ahead to the next slide, please. Beautiful. Well, there has really never been a more exciting time to be in this sector, and I'm so grateful to join the panelists today. It's just over a year ago that the sector and many folks joining the call today came together to develop an open source, sector-generated, nonprofit common data model with program delivery at its core, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the goal for that nonprofit CDM was to help nonprofits to solve problems of data interoperability and to help partners building in the sector to accelerate innovation. And Microsoft was thrilled to become a customer, so to speak, of the nonprofit CDM. So what you see in this visual is that we have built that powerful data model as the foundation underneath our 3 clouds in the suite that we provide to nonprofits. And we're focused on building accelerators just like this phase 1 program design application for partners to take further. And we're really so grateful to join IRC and Threshold.world today to show off that collective phase 1 program design work that helps program managers to build and design log frames using indicators and theories of change. So the goal here is that program designers can utilize their own internal indicators or build from standard indicators like the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a starting point. And in a moment, we'll also get a tour from Dan about how this phase 1 design work will enable partners to collaborate and iterate on program design. We can jump ahead. And IRC is going to tell us about their work and how they're driving innovation in this area.
Fantastic. Thanks, Erin, and thanks, Eric. So my name's Nick Bannister. I'm the Senior Director of Measurement for IRC. I'm going to talk through a couple of things. I'm going to talk through our vision as an organization for how we see technology and where we see technology in our work. I'm going to hand over in a moment to Jess, who's going to talk through a specific instance of that and the project that we've done together with Microsoft and Threshold.world. But first, I'm just going to set the scene a little bit and talk about where IRC is trying to go and what IRC is trying to achieve when it comes to program design and monitoring and evaluation. So we have much in common with the rest of the sector in terms of how we see good program design and what we're trying to achieve within program design. So like many of you, we have an evidence framework. Ours is called the Outcomes and Evidence Framework, and it's based on our understanding of what makes for good programming in conflict and fragile environments. And we want our programs to be based on our understanding of our research and of others' research to be most likely to bring about impact. So we want our programs rooted in evidence. We want our program design to be done as early as possible and to have as much time for refinement and stress testing as possible before we start. And we want our programs to be collaborative. We want to be able to work with our local partners, with our peer INGOs, with our donors, with the UN agencies that coordinate many of our responses, in order to ensure that we're building on the best expertise of various parts of the sector. But we have a business problem. The incentive structures and the environments we work in are often not conducive to designing programs in the way that we want. As a value-based organization, we are constantly struggling with the demands of delivering the programs we have while planning for new programs. We will always stretch ourselves as far as we can to deliver as much as we can, and that means it's hard to get the right people around the table for as long as they need to be there. Compounding that, our donor timelines are short. Anyone who's listening to this will know that many times we only learn about the opportunity to deliver a program shortly before we need to have it designed and submitted. And that creates a series of incentive structures that take us away from good quality program design. When we do program design the way we don't want, we limit our ability to learn from programs as we go. We limit our ability to learn from programs after the fact, and we impact on the quality of delivery by failing to resource properly or failing to think through our theories of change in the right way. On the other hand, the prize is huge to get this right. So if we do this the right way, we deliver more impactful programs, we can course correct programs as we go, and we can learn after the fact from programs that generated good data that can inform our future design. So given the challenges that we face, we have to look at opportunities to do better, and we have to look at ways in which we can overcome our challenges. And for an organization of our size, that's always going to have technology at its heart. So we are looking at how we can use technology to overcome the challenges we face and to design our programs better. So with that in mind, one of the things that the measurement unit at IRC has commissioned over the next 6 months is a review of the technology architecture that we have and the ecosystem that we have for monitoring and evaluation. So where we want to get is a genuinely field-first program design and M&E technology platform. So what that means is that the first customer for us are those that are designing programs and implementing programs, and our job is to ensure that they have access to better quality, more and easier to use data. And to do that means we're going to have to build a system based on an understanding of the complexity of the needs of those users. So as an organization, we deliver programs in conflict environments, in development settings. We deliver in high and low bandwidth environments. Our program staff speak dozens of different languages. We are delivering with different legislative frameworks about how we can use data. We are using databases and systems mandated by our donors, as well as by our partners, as well as the ones we have. And we need to build all of those considerations into any system or any set of systems that we use. As well as that, we need to balance the obvious efficiency gains and the obvious speed gains that come from standardization and the use of more out-of-the-box packages to the need to develop genuinely context-appropriate programs. So we're constantly going to be treading a line between the desire to do standardization and the need to do customization. So in order to do this work, we're launching an internal reflections process on our previous use of technology, reflecting on what we have that's worked, reflecting on what we have that's failed, and we have had some challenges in that area, and we want to be open and transparent about those with ourselves and with the wider sector. We want to look at the best practice that has flourished around the organization. We are fortunate in having extremely entrepreneurial staff who are constantly trying to solve these problems. And we want to consult with IRC staff on their own priorities. So part of us being field first is to go to our field staff and say, what problems are you trying to solve and how can we help you solve them? Beyond that, we also want to partner with the wider sector. So at the end of this presentation, you'll see a call to action for us to get in touch. We would love to hear from those in the IT community, in the monitoring and evaluation, and the program delivery community about ideas you have, experiences you have within your organizations. If you want to learn from any of IRC's experiences or want to have access to what IRC is doing in this space, we would love to hear from you. And we know that the problems we're trying to solve are common to you and vice versa. So please look out for that email address. Please get in touch. We would really love to collaborate. In terms of what we're thinking about, in terms of some of the other things that we're building into this analysis, the first is how to build something that is sustainable. Despite being a relatively large organization, we are always trying to squeeze the maximum bang for the buck. And we are thinking about how to build systems that have a low cost of ownership, that don't come with huge license costs or system or server costs, and can be scaled without huge increases. We also know that interoperability is going to be key. We have tried one-size-fits-all systems, and we think it's pretty unlikely that that's going to be the long-term direction we follow. So anything that we use is going to need to have the ability to talk to other systems, whether that's DHIS2, Microsoft Dynamics, whether it's Comcare, whether it's something else entirely. We know that it's likely to be a patchwork and an ecosystem, and that interoperability will be critical for us. And the last thing is that we know our needs will change over time. The humanitarian sector is changing, it has changed, and what we do now as a program is different to what we have done 5 years ago and will do in the future. We will also have some successes and failures along the way, and we will need an infrastructure that allows us to build on what's working, change with the times, and remain as future-proofed as possible. So a huge set of challenges for us, but an exciting piece of work, and we're really excited about what we might be able to achieve in this area. One thing that we've been exploring with Microsoft is the role that technology might play in program design and indicator selection. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Jess Barra, our fantastic Senior Project Manager in IT, who's going to talk through the work we've already been doing with Microsoft.
Thanks, Nick, for that introduction. So I'm Jess. I'm privileged enough to have worked for IRC for about the last 8 or 9 months or so. And I was lucky enough that my first project here was to work with our generous partners and our incredible IRC staff on designing the tool that we're talking about today. So I just want to share with you a bit about PIDA. So what is PIDA? We love acronyms, as I'm sure all your organisations do. So PIDA is the Program and Indicator Design Assistant. You may have heard Aaron and the Microsoft team refer to it as the Program Design app earlier, but we refer to it as PIDA internally. So as Nick was talking about earlier, when we're talking about program design, early and collaborative program design is key to improved outcome for beneficiaries. We know that. IRC is really fortunate enough to have an outcome and evidence framework library as such that houses our theories of change and interventions to achieve those expected outcomes. It's an incredible source of information that's available for anyone to access. However, the challenge is the bridge the bridge of this source of knowledge and how that translates through to a program design. So how do we actually populate a log frame from that tool? A log frame referring to the logical framework, so the set of activities that a program is going to undertake in order to achieve those expected outcomes. So PITA is designed as a workflow tool to step through program design processes. So building out from a theory of change through to log frame, through to monitoring and evaluation, indicator selection, which, as Nick was talking about earlier, the monitoring and evaluation plans are so key to downstream impacts and monitoring and evaluation processes and practices. It could also act as a document repository tool, so you could house your previous program designs proposals for future reference to highlight and leverage best practice program designs. So how did we go? So how did we go about designing PITA? The way we chose to go about this project is we really wanted to amplify the voices of our IRC staff. IRC staff are some of the most hardest working and dedicated in the world, so we really wanted to make sure their voices were heard. As Nick talked about earlier, good program design involves a large portion of people. Those of you on a call that might be from technology organisations, we've all inherited those projects in the past that may have been designed solely by the salespeople, and we think, oh, if they'd only involved us from the start, we could have done this great. So as part of PITA, we decided to include a wide range of staff, from grant staff, program coordinators, and program coordinators in IRC sense are the technical experts in the areas that we program, evidence and learning staff, and measurement or M&E staff, and IT staff. We also wanted a varying context and programming areas, including technology bandwidth and capability and the type of programming that we undertake. So we partnered with 3 country offices in Pakistan, Ethiopia, Burundi, along with our HQ staff. We undertook over 40 hours of consultation with our staff to understand their processes, their problems and their ideas. As part of the consultation, we were lucky enough, thanks to one of our other partners, Rebel, to have a user experience design expert participate in those sessions. Organisations such as IRC and a lot of those on the call today probably don't usually have access to those experts, so we were really grateful to have that from our partners. What was the feedback that our staff gave us? It was keep it simple. If you take a second to sort of close your eyes and step outside the shoes you're in at the moment and think of a grants manager that's working in Ethiopia who has to manage an existing portfolio of work and submit new proposals and work with new experts in complicated settings, they don't really have much time to actually take the time to train people in new tools and processes. The other feedback that staff gave us was they don't want another tool. So this needs to be integrated with other tools that we have already, or we need to remove existing tools. For example, staff gave us the feedback that they wanted to be able to comment and collaborate really easily as part of the program design, and hence the solution we decided to embed the tool within Microsoft Teams, and Dan's going to take us through that a little bit later during the demo. And I think it's really important to highlight the Teams solution because Teams is already existing within IRC. We already have an existing support model within the IT team. So that in turn reduces the cost to support a solution at the end of the day. What were some of the reflections and lessons learned that we took as part of this process? By talking to our staff, we realised that there isn't sort of a standardised program design process that's been undertaken at IRC. It's being done in a multitude of ways, along with other challenges in relation to process and tools for program design. So it actually highlighted some gaps that we need to start looking at over the next 12 to 18 months. The next part is the adaptability piece. We're very fortunate with our outcome and evidence framework that should we, for example, over the next 12 to 18 months, we want to include climate change as part of one of our outcome areas of focus, the tool enables us to update that quite easily. The interoperability is another key lesson learned. So the work that Threshold.World and Microsoft have been doing in the common data model space really sets us up for the future potential in interoperability with other IRC IT ecosystems. And I think this is the part that often is talked about the least, but probably should be talked about the most. If you asked our CTOM what her one wish would be, she'd probably ask for a pool of unrestricted funds in order to support our IT ecosystem. And unless anyone on the call is going to offer us that today, and if you do, we want to talk to you. But we need to think, if in between time, we need to think about what we can do efficiently in order to support IT tools. The Power App solution is actually quite easy to support and maintain. We did coin the phrase, because I am a non-technical person, that if I can go in and use this, anyone can go in and use this. And so it's really important, in addition to the licensing cost for the Power Apps, is a bit more achievable for most organizations. Just before I hand over to Dan, I just want to iterate one key takeaway. I know we have a mixed group of attendees here from nonprofits and technology companies, but when partnering with organizations like IRC, you're always out for the impact on people's lives, which is absolutely what we all should be aiming for. But if you want to have impact in beneficiaries' lives, our motto at IRC at the moment is field first, referring to thinking of our staff first. Like if I had one wish, it would be that IT solutions are all designed in conjunction with our staff. They are the most busy and dedicated people, and it's really inspirational to see the work that they do in the field. So just take a few seconds to close your eyes and think of that program manager working in Cox's Bazar doing 12-hour days that need solution to make their jobs easier and ultimately to achieve the outcomes that you want to be a part of for beneficiaries' lives. So get your techies and your user experience people in a room, and I promise you the magic will come. So with that, I will hand over to Dan, who will take us through a demo of the PITA tool, the program design tool.
Great. Thanks so much, Jess. And it's a great way to set the context for the work that we've all been had such a pleasure doing together. If you could just pull up the next slide for 1 second before I take over the screen. For those in the room that want to understand the technology that's being used to put this demo together, the key logos are along the right-hand side, and if they're not familiar to you, we're happy to answer questions on them at the end. But as Jess mentioned, you're looking at a Power Platform application derived from the Common Data Model and the Common Data Service and delivered via Microsoft Teams. So with that, I'm going to show you how this works. So the PITA tool is a Power Platform application. It's actually a Canvas app, and as I mentioned, it's delivered inside of Teams. So the way that the program manager accesses the app is just by going to a specific team and clicking on a link where the application is going to be delivered inside of that based on the user's authentication. There's about 5 or 6 key feature sets to this, and I'll highlight a few of the important ones in the context of the time that we have today. But as Nick mentioned earlier, one of the key priorities for IRC is about program design and consistent program design. And so underpinning the application is the ability to view the outcome and evidence framework from the International Rescue Committee inside of the application. Those start with different outcome areas. And just to pick up a sample that we're going to use in the demo today, you can see we have a very basic representation here that works on any device of access to health services. So this is the internal OEF. But you also, as a program manager, have the ability to look at other external references as well. And as a showpiece, we've incorporated the SDGs into this alongside the OEF from the organization. And also the ability to bring in donor-based requirements also through external indicator libraries and frameworks. And behind the scenes, the organization has the ability to administratively relate those to each other so that the program manager can design programs in the language and format that makes sense for them, while at the same time helping the organization maintain that consistency of associating the programmatic work towards the evidence. So as a program manager, I can come in and see a variety of different log frames in the Browse log frames capability. They're also searchable. So you can put in search text and so forth and go find different records. We have a small subset in here for the demo today. Each of these is brought from a specific public reference of a real-life IRC program. So see, these are just a small number of the great programs that are out there in the world today, thanks to IRC and their supporters. And you can also, as a program manager, look at your log frames. In this case, those are the ones that you've created. and be able to filter down to a smaller subset of records that are just relevant to the work that you've been engaged in. And that is intended to help the program managers be able to see other work that's happening in the field, of course, that they should have visibility to. So across the entire outcome and evidence framework, they're able to see those other delivery framework records and activity records. They can also build a log frame. And in this case, we're going to use a real-life example of a country that IRC has been operating in since the early 1980s, which is Pakistan. And by 2020, they'll be on track to affect the lives of more than 1.5 million people in the country. And provided I did this right, which I fortunately did, we have a program briefing typed out that I've just cut and pasted into this field. And you can see it talks about a bit about what's happening in Pakistan, some of the challenges that are faced by constituencies across the country, and then also the priorities for IRC's engagement in there, which are very varied across a number of outcome areas. But in this case, we're going to focus on primary and reproductive health services. And we can enter things like region and country data. We can set due dates just to provide some context as some samples within this template application. We can also specify one or multiple donors that are supporting it. And then one of the important workflows we'll come to later is a basic review process in this first version of the application. So through that, we also want to highlight one of the key challenges is trying to be able to deliver this application to a very broad number of users with minimal training. So based on user feedback, we've incorporated some simple instructions on every page so that new resources and/or resources that need a refresher are able to understand what they ought to do on each of the 4-step processes in developing the log frame. This is where we start to bring the application components together, and we're able to pick from those outcome areas. You can see you have access to all of them, but in this case, we'll just select access to health services since that's relevant to this primary and reproductive services use case. The outcome we seek to achieve is about access to medical care and regular primary care, just as 2 quick examples. And you can see as those outcomes are selected, the indicator selection lights up, and I can actually come through and select the internal OEF indicators that are defined in the application. I'll just pick one in that case. And I can also, if necessary, align those to either external or other standards as well. So I'll just pick this, and I can save from there. So in the course of about 4 clicks, I've added the outcome area, defined the outcomes based on the OEF, and then associated the available indicators. We've also provided here in this version of the app just the ability to add some basic notes. And then we also, within each of the areas that were selected in the prior screen, have the ability to enter basic outputs. So this, in the future, will be based on an extension of evidence-based outputs associated to the OEF in the IRC world. For now, it's free-form text. So I'll just enter percentage of just as a very, very simple example. Save that, and then I can move on to the final stage, which is a preview. So one of the key parts about achieving the interoperability capabilities within IRC's requirements was one, delivering the application in a place that was easy for program managers to get to it, which is Microsoft Teams. But then second, integrating it with other tool sets that are readily available that they're very familiar with. And so in this case, once I actually send this record off for review, Adina, who's the reviewer, is going to get an email in her email inbox that's going to show her all of the details of it, and she can operate within that workflow. But we also wanted to ensure interoperability with the rest of the Office suite that IRC users have access to. And so for demo purposes, right here inside of Teams, that log frame that's just been constructed is going to get saved as a Word doc in a space that's accessible by other end users and editable by other end users, and then it's connected through the Common Data Service back into the log frame application as well. So it brings together that Office productivity capability, which many people are familiar with, including the ability to edit offline, track changes, and collaborate, which is really important to enable collaboration, as well as the ability to have that simple form entry right inside of the application delivered via Teams, where as long as you've provisioned people's access to that team, you can govern their access to the application. And ultimately, if I can just pass back to Jess as a final point to show the second slide. Jess, are you there? We may have lost Jess. We can always come back to that point. There it comes. Thanks, Jess. So you're able to connect back through the application and the Office suite into the Common Data Service and the nonprofit Common Data model, effectively making all of that capability invisible to the program manager who IRC wants to be able to support out in the field. So with that, I will stop and hand it back to Erin for an update on where this goes from here.
Thanks so much, Dan. It's great to take a peek at all of this and see it at work. Excellent. So it's an understatement to say that it's a busy time for our entire sector, as it always is. And as organizations like IRC and others face pressure and expectations to design and execute on their programs with greater transparency and to build trust, we at Microsoft are working with our partners to solve a wide range of challenges facing all of you today. And so if there's one point to take away from this view of our solution roadmap, it's that program delivery is at the core of Microsoft's investment in the sector. And as we look ahead to what's on deck next, we will move ahead to tackle challenges in case management, project management, and field services, and we'll speak in a moment about specific ways that you can get involved in those efforts. And we're really depending on those of you who've joined today to keep the conversation going. And I just want to reiterate what Dan mentioned. There have been a couple questions that have come up in the chat about what technology is underpinning the app that you saw today. So this is built on Microsoft's Power Platform, our low-code, no-code technology, and this is specifically a Canvas app that utilizes the nonprofit Common Data model and Common Data Service, and further integrates with Microsoft's Teams to enable the collaboration that's in phase 1 that Dan showed off. So we will continue maximizing the value and ease of the Power Platform and what it affords to partners and nonprofit users as we move forward with our development. So as we move ahead to the next slide, we want to raise your awareness to 3 specific ways to get involved after you leave this session today. And we value and greatly need your participation in these efforts, and we'll be sharing contact information with you in the chat to make it very easy for you to connect with us. So first things first, reach out to Adina if you like what you saw today and you would like to participate in our public preview of the program design and monitoring and evaluation app that Dan demoed today. We are in a phase of accepting and seeking user feedback, and we'll iterate on this. We are focused on a February launch of this app. I'm sure that question is going to be asked in the chat, so I'll highlight that now. And we would really love your participation in that preview. Second, we are looking ahead to program delivery, research, and discovery. And so please reach out to me at my contact information here if you would like to participate in that research effort. And finally, I will let Dan speak to the third opportunity here around engaging with IRC, or maybe Jess would like to speak to that, around how to engage with IRC around the initiative they are building and the leadership role that they've taken with the plan that they've shared today.
Hey, Karen. Yeah, well, we're just, as Nick referred to earlier, we're kind of in a state of really assessing our monitoring and evaluation technology ecosystem and landscape. And we're really just keen to hear from other organisations on listening on what's working well and what's not working so well. We're keen to collaborate in that space, so we're not recreating the wheel and really sharing knowledge. So if anyone's got any ideas or suggestions, please just reach out to me.
Great, and so with that, that's the end of the formal presentation. We've left ample room for questions, and I see some questions coming in from chat as we've been going along. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to Jess and Nick from IRC for participating in this and all the work that IRC did to help prepare this webinar. And then also a huge thank you to Aaron and Dan for the content to create this. So it takes real collaboration across sector to create tools like this, and we're hopeful, through the use of the common data model and common data service that we're building solutions that are encouraging interoperability and encouraging the sharing of data to make simple, durable solutions available for some of the key workflows that come up in the sector.
Well, thank you very much, Eric, and all the presenters for a most interesting and kind of a look into the state of the art of monitoring and evaluation. Obviously, it spurred a lot of questions, so we're going to take them from the top. And there was one that came in early on before you got to show the ease of use of all of this, but we'll revisit them anyway. First question was, this set of tools looks exciting, but to what degree does it require training of program designers, program implementers, and even beneficiaries? Can you discuss how you address that?
Do you want me to take that one?
So I can take a real quick stab at that, but I think this is probably better answered by Jess. The design philosophy that we're taking, like we certainly have field organizations in mind, and that tools like this ought to be and should be designed to be very, very simple to train and very, very simple to pick up and operate. And so you saw some of that in the demo that Dan showed around the tooltips, things like that. But from an interface perspective, it's something that we really tried to incorporate on how to create these solutions so it has the broadest applicability and easiest adoption.
I think you pretty much summed it up there, Eric. From an IRC perspective, yeah, it is a very simple tool to use, but we would have to think about a training plan in order to bring people up to speed with the use of it. But we do see, because it has been designed in conjunction with our staff, that it is quite an easy workflow step to manage. So it should be a little less impact of training compared to other complex, sometimes IT tools.
Great. There was another question. I think you addressed it a couple times. That this is such a interesting constellation of different tools. So the next question was, I may have missed it. What's the name of the software tools in which you house your theory of change and logframe? Is it Dynamics or does it integrate with Dynamics?
So if they're referring to our outcomes and evidence framework, it's a web-based tool that I think sits on a SQL database. What I can do is quickly now, I'll actually copy the link. It's an external facing website that anyone can access. I'll copy it in a link and share it with everyone.
Excellent. Any other comments there?
Yeah. So the intent is this is built on Power Platform. Power Platform does not carry a dependency with Dynamics, so you don't need to have any D365 licensing to use this tool. It does, however, fully seamlessly integrate with Dynamics should you happen to use that as well. Through Common Data Service, that's possible, as well as the integrations that Dan was showing to other Microsoft products in the O365 space. The other intent with this is to make it as easily accessible as possible by utilizing the application and embedded features in Teams And third-party and first-party Microsoft solutions can be loaded that way, and so you're able to form a team, collaborate on team, and in sharing documents and communicating with one another, and then now also utilize tools together to build solutions. And so it's an example of that pattern as well.
I'm going to jump ahead. There's a couple related questions to this. There was a question, can you discuss a little further integration with data sources outside of the Microsoft product suite and platforms?
Yeah, I'll speak generally about that, and if others on the team, either on the IRC side or our side, can address it as well. So the answer is yes, through configuration. And so through the tools that we have available, you can have connectors to different upstream data sources or downstream data sources. So if you're looking at this, this specific solution is around, building a log frame. If you're actually tracking the data and want to bring the data together to look at the measurements against the indicators, you might have a connector to Survey CTO, which Oxfam and Microsoft worked with Survey CTO to create that, or with Demagi for ComCare, or other like solutions. So we are very much encouraging the sharing of data. We're not looking to replace tools that are out there. It's a multi-platform world, so definitely possible through our technology to build integrations with upstream or downstream data sources.
Yeah, I think there was even mentioned here some integration with the HIS2.
Yep. So
do you want to? So no, one of our main monitoring and evaluation data platforms at the moment is DHIS2, or COMET as we refer to it internally. We're not looking at exactly at this point in time, because as Nick's referring to, we're kind of doing a landscape analysis of our M&E ecosystem and seeing whether we continue with DHIS2 or start exploring another tool. So the exact direction on that integration hasn't been set as such, but it would be on a roadmap plan.
Just one comment on that. DHIS2 is also used widely by ministries of health in sub-Saharan Africa, and those types of data sets may also be something you may import into an analytics here, I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a short list of tools like that that my team's targeting for working with those organizations to create connectors into our environment. Either at the simplest level, that's being able to utilize Power BI with the data in those solutions. And at the more complex level, it's embedding that data into solutions like you're seeing here today.
Yeah, so there was a question along those lines that just came in, and that was, are there any limitations in terms of larger data sets, such as thousands of indicators or thousands of users?
No, the Power Platform allows for a lot of scalability, and the architecture is such that you can load your own organization's indicators into the framework. So use what you have internally, and then marry that with some of the standard frameworks out there. We started with the SDGs. There could be other standard indicator sets as well in the future.
Excellent. Well, I just want to encourage people on the call to keep posting their questions in the chat window. We'll take them as they come in. There were a few more that we haven't addressed yet. Roughly what percentage of IRC's indicators are donor defined and required versus IRC defined through own learning?
I think this is probably the best one for me to take. So IRC's recently revised its core indicator library. So our understanding of the indicators that are most pertinent in terms of understanding whether we're having programmatic impact or delivering our programs effectively. And we have 81 standard interventions, and we have 531 standard indicators that speak to those. We then did a piece of work to understand and track all of the major donors to IRCs who have standardized results frameworks, so UNHCR or ECHO or PRM or OFDA, and to document all of those. And that took us, there's about 400 of those. And we then looked at where there's a direct overlap, and we found that about 3/4 of our donor indicators have a direct equivalent with IRC. So for all of those, essentially the question doesn't apply because the indicator is both an IRC indicator and a donor indicator. Our donors do not generally have an issue with us including IRC indicators over and above. So there's just over 100, about 130 donor indicators that we don't use as an organization, and we would need to include, but essentially a very, very high degree of overlap between how our donors see the world and us. And this tool allows us to see the world in either way, to load one or both sets of indicators and to generate log frames that speak both to IRC's internal ways of working, but also to donors' external ways of comparing us to Save the Children or Mercy Corps, or aggregating data across a program intervention. So the tool has the flexibility, but we didn't find there to be that dichotomy quite as strongly as we thought we might when we started our work on indicators.
So it's fair to say that these number or the indicators are dynamic in the system. It's relatively easy to add and adjust the indicators you're managing.
That my question might be answered best by me. Yes, it is easy. If I can get into the tool and update the indicators in Power Apps, then anyone can.
You shouldn't cut yourself short there. Well, next question is just to clarify, the common data model is being used to build this Canvas app, and Dynamics is not required. I think you answered that already, Eric, but it may be worth repeating.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep. Do you want us to elaborate on that?
Go ahead. We have time to elaborate.
So the architecture is such that the common data model itself is disconnected from any Dynamics dependencies. So any solution that is created using the CDM doesn't then also carry a dependency with Dynamics, and that's true for all the Power Platform Suite applications as well. So that's Power Apps, Power BI, the product formerly known as Flow, which I'm
Power Automate.
Power Automate, thank you, and Power Virtual Agent, which is a new chatbot tool, low-code, no-code tool to create chatbots for your organization. So all of those are available at the nonprofit discounted rate, and then what we're doing as a TSI team is building then purpose-built technology on top of that, like the tool you'll see here, and then we make that available in AppSource and on GitHub, free for anyone to pick up and use. We don't charge for any of the software that we purposely build for the sector. You just need the underlying subscription at the deeply discounted rate that we negotiate as Tech for Social Impact. So in just very simple language, no dependency with D365. You can utilize this tool low cost, and it doesn't carry dependencies into other applications. So there's not sneaky licensing that happens that ties you into other tools.
Yeah, we don't like sneaky licensing for sure. Excellent. Since we were talking about indicators, there was a general question about, is there a great place to find indicators already created by other organizations, allowing organizations not to recreate the wheel?
Yeah, so I can take this one again, Nick Bannister here. So we as an organization, Jess mentioned this earlier, about 5 years ago undertook the development of the outcomes and evidence framework. So we reviewed all of the work that we had done in terms of original research, and we did a huge evidence review of what was out there in the rest of the sector. And we broke the world into 5 kind of broad outcome areas. So health, economic well-being, safety, education, and power. And we looked at the different theories of change that we thought applied and the evidence that was behind each and every one of those theories of change. We rated them with a traffic light system that said red, amber, green. So red meant we felt that intervention was actively harmful or not supported by best evidence. Amber suggested that there was more data that needed to be gathered, but that there was some evidence of efficacy or evidence of applicability in other contexts. And green meant that we felt that was an evidence-supported intervention. And that tool is available online. If you search Outcomes and Evidence Framework IRC, you can find it. We'll also share the link afterwards. That's fully open to anybody, no passwords licensing required. And as part of that, we developed an indicator library, which we have just updated and replaced. So the indicator library that you can currently find on there will shortly be replaced with the new 500 or so indicators I've described. And again, they will be open to the wider sector. So they include definitions, numerators, denominators, data collection frequencies, where they exist, standardized data collection tools. So that's something that the sector can access as it wishes and use as it finds useful. So we'd encourage people to take a look at that, and there are mechanisms to get in touch if you have feedback on this.
Thanks, Nick. One thing to add on that is one of the things that I talked about at the NetHope conference in Puerto Rico was if there was appetite or interest in coming together across sector to identify and build on what some of the common indicator sets are, so that we can help reinforce or create where necessary common indicator sets across donors, funders, and grantees. And the extent to which Microsoft can help be some convening power there to get that conversation started, we'd be happy to do that. Really leave that up to the NetHope community to advise us on, but see some real potential there. It's a huge aspirational project to try and get any of that moving, but if not now, when?
Excellent. Since we're on indicators, there is a drill down question on indicators here, and that was, are all indicators at the outcome level, or will there be output level indicators as well?
So within IRC's indicator library and within our Outcomes and Evidence Framework, we have everything at different levels from the base output of, a basic thing you can count through to impact measures that you could use. So the framework that we have includes that. I think it's probably best if I let Dan speak to the way in which they could be presented in the tool that he's walked us through today. My understanding is they can.
Yeah. Yep. The short answer, Nick, for your comments is yes. The research that was done in parallel to the IRC collaboration essentially demonstrated there was a significant lack of consistency in both naming and structures, which I think is appropriate for the diversity of programs that are in the field. And so the architecture in the nonprofit common data model allows for any level of tiering, parentage, or relationship between what are called measurement items. So if you look back at the presentation following the webinar today, you'll see the measurement item entity can be attached effectively anywhere across the results framework and the program delivery structure. Or if those standard connections didn't work, then of course you could add new ones after installation that work for your organization.
Yeah, I might just touch on that because I think we might have a few M&E people by the looks of some of the questions coming through about the outcomes. What's missing at the moment, the workflow that's built in there at the moment is built by outcome areas. But what's missing is by intervention, which I'm sure a lot of the organisations on the call probably program by intervention. So it's something that you could pick up and add into yourself, or it could be on the roadmap to develop it out further. But we just work with outcomes first to begin with.
Yeah, you picked up something very important with this webinar. Not only do we have an expert panel, but we have expert attendees. So this is very, very, very good and deep discussion. There is a lot of interest in the questions relative to integration. So we're going to jump to a couple of questions around deeper integration. First question was, can project details be brought in from another system versus creating them here? And then you showed cut and paste, which is one way of doing integration, I guess. But are there some other a deeper level of integration that can be done in terms of entering project details, or maybe getting them from other places?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is Erin, and what you see here today is really the phase one work of this. And so what the urgent call to action with this team is to get involved, bring those ideas into this public preview phase, and collaborate with us to help take this forward so we can continue to build value in here that our partners can take forward. And I think that's a great theme and topic for future.
Yeah, it's technology, so anything's possible, right? We want to make sure that we're building the things that are most appropriate and will be adopted. So, you know, the work we did with IRC, being able to take that work forward with IRC, but also with input from other organizations, that's critically important for this to be a successful tool. So that's great input.
Yes, so the question another question that was posted and asked, send a link to the indicator library, and I believe that's what Nick just posted on oefrescue.org. So people can pick that up, and we'll make sure that that is also part of the follow-up email, as well as we'll post that to the webinar landing page. So next question, and a compliment. A great session and initiative. The effort to integrate mainstream products tools into the M&E workflow is valuable. Is there a process for picking up the knowledge, process, and visualization from one project and copy pasting it to another project? And there was a follow-on question there that said, is there a Tableau integration on the roadmap?
Here I would make one more plug for the nonprofit common data model as the brokering agent, where so much of this future capability will be possible. The whole goal of that data model is to allow for data interoperability between the variety of systems that you're using. And when we map out the map of systems that play for any one of your organizations, it's a very crowded map.
So I would add to that, you know, our strategy in working with other platforms, we don't want to be in the position where we create the connectors to those third-party sources. Much healthier for the third-party sources to create the connections into the platform technology. And that's for a couple of reasons. We don't know when innovations happen, and if we built it, you know, there's high probability that the connectors would break. Unless they're owned by the organizations that are running that other third-party software. So the Demagis, the survey CTOs, the Tableaus of the world either have or are building connectors into Microsoft ecosystem. And that's really good and healthy. And so the extent to which we are building specific integrations that help aggregate knowledge, process, and visualizations across programs and to build platforms that foster knowledge management and learning environment program to program, awesome. You know, engage with Aaron as we look at the roadmap and features that we want to include in the future. And then integrations with organizations like Tableau. Happy to take those conversations forward and talk to Neil or others at Tableau about how they could fit into this. You know, bottom line, this is all structured data, so a tool like Tableau kind of naturally works with anything that we're doing.
Right, and there's tremendous opportunity. So keep that feedback coming. And what we're really looking for in this next phase are those real use cases where you say, look, you know, I have data here, data there, I need this to come together, and I see a time savings and an efficiency for my program team here.
Well, fantastic. We are officially out of time, and thank you very much to Jessica, Aaron, Nick, Eric, and Dan, and to the audience for excellent interaction. Please look for a summary email from everyone and for everyone, and please share that with your colleagues that might be interested in this topic. And with that, I also urge you to answer the few questions that we're going to pop up on your browser as you leave here today. And have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you might be. We'll be back in touch soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.